Brexit news. EU citizens, what will happen to EU citizens in the UK after Brexit? Prime Minister has said that she set out a very fair and serious offer for EU residents in Britain during the European Council summit in Brussels last week. She said, "I want to reassure all those EU citizens in the UK, who have made their lives and homes in the UK, no one will have to leave. We won't be seeing families split apart." The UK government has set out more details in London on Monday. The offer is dependent on British expats in EU member states being given the same rights after Brexit. Under the plans, EU nationals who have been in the UK for more than 5 years will get settled status, which includes healthcare, education and welfare rights. EU citizens who have not been in the UK as long will be given the opportunity to stay on until they meet the necessary 5-year threshold. Those arriving after a yet-to-be-defined cut-off date will have a grace period to regularize their status. We won't be seeing families split apart. British Prime Minister Theresa May. But the cut-off date for residency rights, sometime between March 2017 and Brexit Day, will not be known until later in the negotiation process. Former UKIP leader Nigel Farage said, "We cannot have an open door to EU migrants between now and the end of the Brexit process. Time to get a grip on the immigration issue." Mrs May has rejected demands that the European Court of Justice should continue to have jurisdiction on EU citizenship issues in the UK after Brexit. Last week she told EU leaders, "The commitment that we make to EU citizens will be enshrined in UK law and will be enforced through our highly respected courts." Brexit news. EU citizens, what happens to EU citizens after Brexit? She acknowledged that elements of the package will be challenged by Brussels, saying, "Of course, there will be details of this arrangement which will be part of the negotiation process." German Chancellor Angela Merkel said the proposals represented a good start, but cautioned that there were many other issues before Britain could reach agreement on a withdrawal deal. The government paper published in Parliament on Monday said that the authorities will do all they can to simplify the process of applying for settled status, effectively granting indefinite leave to remain, while keeping the costs down. The administrative procedures which they will need to comply with in order to obtain these new rights will be modernized and kept as smooth and simple as possible, the paper said. Our aim is to make the application process as streamlined and user-friendly as possible for EU citizens and their families lawfully resident in the UK. Among the measures being considered is matching with revenue and customs records to show someone has been living in the UK continuously for 5 years rather than, for example, requiring them to produce 5 years' worth of pay slips. Dependent relatives who join an EU national in the UK before Brexit takes place will also be able to apply for settled status once they have been resident for 5 years. The government does intend to introduce a voluntary scheme to enable eligible EU citizens to apply for their permission to stay and residence document before the UK's withdrawal from the EU, the paper said. This will enable them to obtain their UK immigration status at an early stage should they wish to do so, in order to ensure a smooth and efficient process as possible for EU residents. Applicants for settled status will face criminal record checks to exclude those who are serious or persistent criminals and those whom we consider a threat to the UK. Jonathan Portes, a fellow at the UK and a Change in Europe, said that the issue of EU citizens' rights is likely to be the most salient political issue as Brexit negotiations get underway. In a new report, he said, the extent to which the UK government is prepared to compromise on this issue which, for the EU, must involve some continued elements of European law holding sway in the UK for an extended period will be a key signal of whether an ultimate deal is possible. Last week Food and Drink Federation Director General Ian Wright welcomed the Prime Minister's proposals for the 117,000 EU workers employed in the UK's food and drink industry. Mr. Wright said, "They are hugely valued, but in the past 12 months have lived under a cloud of uncertainty. It is time to allay their fears. We now look forward to further details from the government on Monday and urge negotiators on both sides to resolve this matter swiftly."